Hey you, it's your host Shirley and welcome back to my show. So today I have a very, very special guest. Today we have Samia Halaby in the studio. Say hi.
Hi, everyone.
Samia, this is super exciting because you are here in Taiwan for the first time because of Taipei Biennial. Is that right?
That's correct. And I'm very pleased. It's enjoyable.
Well, at the time this episode is out, your performance will be over. But as the time we're recording now, could you tease us a little bit of the performance you will do?
Well, the performance is going to be a collaboration live. It is what is called irtijal in Arabic and jamming in English. So we don't know exactly what the other person is doing. We've practiced ideas. Togar uses electronic music and makes many wonderful instruments. And my program is something that is written in the C language in the 90s. It's old, so there's probably 2 generations of artwork there between me and Togar, but they seem to gel.
No, wait, on that note, could you share with us, give a very introduction of yourself, especially how old you are and where you're from and where is home for you now?
I was born in 1936 in the last month on the 12th day, and very soon I'll be 87.
Nice.
I'm amazed that I can my siblings are amazed that I can do all that I can do.
Yeah.
And everybody tries to help me stand up and sit.
But I know you got it yourself.
Anyway, yes, I was born in Jerusalem before Israel was ever created. So in my memory is a very wonderful society and beauty of the relations, social relations that Palestinians have. And still have, you can still see the beauty of those relationships and how the people of Gaza have been responding to the incredible imposition of a tragedy in their lives. Yes, then, so we'll get back to that. But
yes, we
meanwhile, my parents were both of the Greek Orthodox Church. My father was born in 1905 before the First World War. And there was a famine artificially created in Palestine by the British and the Americans. And he lost his 3 older brothers and eventually his father. His brothers didn't die, but because of the war, they were one way or the other taken out of the family and ended up in the U.S. But my father became the head of the family at a young age. And he was in the streets earning his living and eventually made a really good life for us. And so in 1948, we left Palestine. It was a huge tragedy for my father. And it has many, many connotations, and the tragedy continues to affect our lives.
Yes, and which we will talk a lot more later on. And I really look forward to talking about this with you. So, you mentioned you're turning 87 very soon.
Very soon.
Yes,
I'm 86 now.
Yeah, turning 87 very soon. Amazing. So, throughout your celebrated career, you've created such a diverse plethora of works in different forms as well, in drawings, in printmaking, computer-based kinetic art. And one of the most prominent ones are your abstract paintings. So, what sparked you into doing abstract art?
I don't know. For some reason, had the persuasion that I'm going to be an abstract painter. And there wasn't that atmosphere, and abstraction was just coming into the U.S. in the 40s and 50s. But it wasn't in the schools, and it wasn't in the Midwest where we lived at the time. And it always needed to be explained and protected. But I had to me personally, it was more instinct and intuition. But as time went by, I began to realize more intellectually and more out of study and attention, that it really does have a very serious political basis, abstraction. And even though there's an abstraction that existed since prehistory in pictures.
Very much so, yeah.
There's always, even when we see an illusionist painting from the Renaissance, or like all the paintings I've been looking at, Chinese paintings, there's a lot of serious abstraction in them. But to have something without images, without the idea of the one eye seeing the world while frozen, to truly have thorough abstraction, only was born in revolutionary times.
Yeah.
First of all, by the French Impressionists during the Paris Commune, and then the Soviet artists during the Soviet Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, during the trade union movement, the industrial union movement in the USA, abstract expressionism was very much created by leftist artists and a revolutionary atmosphere. So in a way, when people talk to me about politics, your political posters, your political documentary art, truly the abstraction is the most political of them all, but somehow people don't quite figure that one out.
You know what? I used to be one of those people, really, because I think figurative art, as a kid or as someone, just as a human, I found myself like naturally drawn to, for example, Renaissance paintings. It's still one of my favorite artworks, but I like sometime before, I seldom find abstract painting sparking my like special interest, mostly because it's harder to find relevance to such abstract shapes and colors than figurative art. But getting to know your work really, for me, it's sort of like a revelation for me. And I learned from you that you see abstraction as an imitation of reality. So for people who know little of abstract art, as you mentioned, what is a good introduction to finding relevance in these abstract shapes and choices of colors?
Well, it helps when people are very open and intuitive to what they're looking at, and not to be frightened and to trust themselves. It's hard to say where you go and to think about it, and there's nothing wrong with being attracted to illusion or to the Renaissance.
Yeah.
You know, the Renaissance, remember, at one point capitalism was very revolutionary. And those artists of the Renaissance are part of human revolution, and they're very precious, and when you see them, you don't know what they're doing to you, but they're making you excited. And abstraction, when I see the abstraction of the Soviet artists, I just want to run home and work, and something very exciting in it. And you know, when you look at Van Gogh, for me, Van Gogh is so beloved by so many people. Everybody loves Van Gogh. And it's not because he's silly or romantic. It's because a huge number of people, including workers, instinctively know that there's something in that art that is about their life and not about the life of the ruling class. So it's not angry with the rich wife, you know, with all her jewelry. So, and he's paying attention to form in a different way. But the one thing I would say to people who look at abstraction is, when you see my paintings and you feel something you like in it, I think it's because you've seen it before. I think it's because you've experienced it before, but you don't have a language for it. And I have come and given you a visual language for it. I've provided like this spoken language. You have a word to describe something. You feel relief here. I can share this with you. I can, you know, we're social. We want to give it to each other. So that's what the painting does. You can use my painting as your language. So the interesting part is sometimes people come and tell me they see things that I thought I didn't see, and then I look and say, oh, they're right. They're in there. Another thing that might help is that it is an illusion of reality. And to remember that as a working class art, as an art for the future, it is an art that does not accept the responsibility of praising the ruling class. It never has a picture of the president or the king or the doctor or the corporate leadership or whatever. It's not describing how they play golf and how they collect their jewelry.
I know some of those.
So we're free of that. We are free to explore ideas. And abstraction explores general principles, not particulars. Anything that's an image, and mind you, I don't put it down, it's part of our technology, like
sure.
Renaissance art contributed. So did Chinese painting. All the things we have contributed to
it's like they build on each other and they evolve, or in some ways kind of mutate in a very organic way. That's how I feel.
They also provide information for technologies that feed us.
Very much so, yeah.
Build our buildings. There was projection in the first Chinese painting that had depth in it, to me, was Han painting. And projection is an illusion of depth. And the Renaissance makes it more scientific, and now we use that to build our homes, to build our factories, etc. AutoCAD, it's useful. Division of color is useful. They all came of painting. And letters, where did letters come from? Pictures. So, we're now to a world, the painting has to move to the future. It can't just be repeating the past. Some can repeat the past. We want pretty things around, but there's an area of research where we want to find general principles. I'm going on too long.
No, it's fine. Please don't hold back.
It's not possible to paint a date with an illusionist painting. There are things
date
that,
as in time or the fruit?
As in time.
Okay.
I can't give you January 5, 1905 in a painting unless I write it. So there are things that are very visual. There are principles that abstraction can begin to do. Mathematics has generalities that allows us to add, and addition is a very useful generality, general principle. So in painting, we can start now looking at general principles rather than particulars. If I have a portrait of you, I have to be specific. It's one. But with abstraction, an image can represent many ones. It can describe a quality in nature, growth, wave motion, luminosity, etc.
Yeah, when you mentioned date, the first example that I thought of was actually a rather, you can say, figurative painting by Goya, the 3rd of May, and that series. So I feel like it's a good segue to talk about, because Goya was painting a very important historic event that I really wish more people know about. And I find that gateway that you described, also the freedom in abstract art, I felt that very strongly in your body of work that's called the Dome of the Rock series. So I want to talk about this with you a little bit. So what inspired you to create this body of work, and what stories are behind the shapes and the colors people could see?
Well, the Dome of the Rock series happened at a point where I had spent my career as a painter examining how we see, and then challenging the perspective theory, because it's an abstraction. It's not the way we see. And I had arrived at a point where it was time to shift completely from testing how we see the world with one eye, frozen like a camera, and challenging perspective, to wanting to move. I wanted to see what a flat picture would be if it reflected how we see as we move. Walking down the street, you can see shapes expand and contract. And there's all kinds of things happening. So how do you put that in one picture? Not a movie, not a lens. We're not talking about a lens. We're talking about intellectualizing and thinking of things, that images that can give you principles.
Picture making.
That applies to many, many realities.
Yeah, and I watched several interviews that I did before, and I think you mentioned during your travels, for example, in Aleppo, you saw the mosque and how the tiles on the floor and everything. It's the image. It's so rich, and at least for me, looking at your work, the most abstract, seemingly abstract forms, but I see architecture. I see texture.
You should. You should see things. Back to the Dome of the Rock series, as I was changing like that, and I decided, one of the experiments I wanted to do was I went to see the Dome of the Rock, and I saw these amazing images pictorial images, and I decided I'm going to extract from them their principles, not the way they looked, but the principles they're based on. So I decided I was going to let the geometry, the rectangle, give birth to the shapes inside. So whatever, it was a geometric analysis. And at the same time, all of the inlaid marbles that I saw next to each other, all these textures, instead of shading, I began to put different textures next to each other. So I'm imitating the principle, but not drawing marble, but just here different from here. So it was a different art. There's no shading is very attractive. People love seeing shading.
Okay, go on. You as an artist, I feel like you're so open to exploring new approaches to painting that can transform people's ways of seeing and of thinking, and not only just within aesthetics, it's but also as a way to discover new perspectives. And it rings very true for me deeply personally, because one main reason I love talking to artists, I love what artists could do, is sparking people's curiosity and sparking people to ask questions, and also asking them in different ways, encouraging this like childlike curiosity and wonder. So on that note, I would love to know more about your childhood. I learned that your grandmother's garden in Jerusalem and your family home, where your family have lived for generations and generations, have inspired you a lot. What was the garden like, and any memories of your childhood home in Palestine that really stood out for you?
As I described, my father was rags to riches kind of thing. And so he moved from Jerusalem, where our families had lived for centuries, to Jaffa, which was a port city. Every week he would take us up to visit my grandmother and the other both grandmothers and cousins. And she had a garden that had a little fish pond in the middle, and there were trees I could climb. And then she would tell my parents, "Oh, Samia is being overshadowed by her two older brothers. You're going to keep her with me." And I'd stay with her for a week until they came back, and I would be treated like a princess by my grandmother. And there was a little cage for rabbits and a little cage for chicken, and she would let me get the little chicks out and pretend to be a shepherd. It was a great deal of fun. And it was very beautiful. It was small and very formal, and trees that I looked at, and there was a geometry in the trees that fascinated me. So it had a very strong effect on me. Yes, and she was amazing too, my grandmother. And my grandmother talked to me seriously as though I was an adult. But I mean, she didn't. It wasn't that she's putting heavy weights on me, but she was talking to me.
She recognizes that every child, they have their own agency, and it's the same as every human being, not because they're young or
She knew that I would remember what she said.
But you do,
I do. We do. Children do. That was my childhood in Palestine, was very special, especially vis-a-vis my maternal grandmother. And my father built up his life, and eventually we moved to Beirut. And as a result, we were exiled into Beirut, one might say. And Beirut was very beautiful at the time.
Lebanon.
And it was a very special, and I was young and protected by my family, and didn't really feel the horrible effects of the Nakba at that time because of that protection. Though I knew my father had returned back to Palestine after he got us out, so he would join the resistance he'd always been part of. And as a city, it's my life has always been that of a city person. So there was something very special in the city of Beirut.